Ako mas tama eh. God country. Kalitan.
Recording in progress.
Early asan. The session is called to order. Please rise for the singing of the national anthem.
Bayang magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan ka ng magiting, sa manlulupi, di ka masisingil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baka, may nilang ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng wataw at mo'y tagumpay na nagtitigil. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng wala.
Please remain standing for a minute of silent prayer. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we call the roll of members.
The Secretary General is directed to call the roll of members.
Roll call of members, honorable representatives, Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg Saldivar, Abunda, Acosta, Acosta Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez Franz, Alvarez Genaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Omentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barzaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulut, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Kawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Cayetano Alan Peter, Cayetano Laarni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco, Colliantes, Crisologo, Cuwa, Cuaresma, Cueva, Culyamat, Dagoo, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, De Loso Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, D. Faustino Ino, D. Faustino Michael, D. Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Ed, Go Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulyas, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Haloshos, Javier, Jimenez, Ko Elisa, Ko Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Leachon, Legarda, Lim, Lim Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Momo, Natividad Naganyo, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho, Nograles, Fidel, Nolasco, Nunez Malaniaon, Uwaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Owano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Martin, Romualdez Yeda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salvador Tambunting, Sanchez, Sangkopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulug, Saveliano, Siao, Silverio, Singson, Singson Mihan, Sinsuwat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tan Alaysa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Sharian, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Chutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri.
Okay na.
Madam Speaker, the roll call shows that 298 members responded to the call.
With 298 members present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we proceed with the reference of business and direct the Secretary General to read the titles of the bills and resolutions on first reading, as well as our communications and committee reports.
Hearing no objection, the Secretary General is directed to do so.
Reference of business, communications, letter dated October 1st, 2021 of the CSC Chairperson submitting to the House a copy of their 2020 annual report.
To the Committee on Civil Service and Professional Regulation.
Letters from certain municipal and city mayors informing the House of their reports on fund utilization and status of programs, projects, activities implementation relative to LGSFs, and Bayanihan Grant to cities, municipalities, and provinces for certain months of 2021.
To the Committee on Appropriations.
Letter dated October 7, 2021 of the MWSS former chairman and administrator, forwarding to the House a copy of his terminal report to the President and a copy of the Flow Journal Volume 1, Number 1.
To the Committee on Government Enterprises and Privatization.
Letter dated October 13, 2021 of the Catanduanes State University President submitting to the House a copy of their quarterly physical report of operations as of September 30, 2021.
To the Committee on Higher and Technical Education.
Committee reports. Report numbers 1336 and 1337 of the Committee on Justice on House Bill numbers 10529 and 10530. Report number 1338 of the Committee on Energy on House Bill number 10531. Report numbers 1339 and 1340 of the Committees on Tourism and Appropriations on House Bill numbers 10532 and 10533.
All the aforementioned committee reports are referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we immediately transmit all bills approved on third reading during yesterday's session, November 22, 2021.
Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The Secretary General is directed to do so. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we consider on third and final reading House Bill number 10335, and may I request the Secretary General to read the title of the bill and thereafter call the roll of members for nominal voting.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the Secretary General is hereby directed to read the title of the bill and thereafter call the roll for nominal voting.
House Bill number 10335, an act providing for the construction of the Pacific Palisades Superhighway connecting the Bicol region and the provinces of Quezon, Aurora, Quirino, Isabela, and Cagayan. Roll call of members in consideration of third reading of House Bill number 10335. Abante, Abaya, Bellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Saldivar, Abunda, Costa, Costa Alba, Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez, Franz, Alvarez, Genaro, Alvarez, Pantaleon, Amante, Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Aumentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas, Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barsaga, Bascug, Bautista, Bautista, Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilia, Bondok, Berdado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulot, Bustos, Kabatbat, Cabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro, Franz, Castro, Fredinil, Cayetano, Alan, Cayetano, Laarni, Celeste, Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco, Coliantes, Crisologo, Cua, Quaresma, Cueva, Culiamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, De Loso Montalia, Di Maporo Abdullah, Di Maporo Khalid, Duavit Duhali Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Evcas Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita Buhay, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis Flores, Fortun, Fortuna, Frasco, Fentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Goed, Gomark, Gonzaga, Gonzales, Aurelio, Gonzales, Neptali, Gonzales, Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulias, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera, D. Hofer, Halosos, Javier Jimenez, Co, Elisa, Co, Wilton, Kunghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacson Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Liachon, Legarda, Lim, Lim, Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Makapagal, Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Momo, Natividad Nagaño, Nava, Nieto, Noel Nograles, Jericho, Nograles, Fidel, Nolasco, Nunez Malanyaon, Uwaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Roni, Ordanes, Ortega, Uwano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pinchay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez, Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Martin, Romualdez Sieda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salvador Tambunting, Sanchez, Sangcopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulug, Savellano, Shao, Silverio, Singson, Singson Mihan, Singsuwat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, C. Alvarado, Taduran Talyado, Tan Alaysa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Sharian, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas, Chutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villaraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate, Zubiri. Second call for consideration on third reading of House Bill number 10335. Abante, Abaya, Abunda, Costa, Costa Alba, Agaraw, Alvarez, Pantaleon, Amatong, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Banyas Nograles, Baronda, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bulot, Kabatbat, Canama, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Chungalao, Co Angelica, Juanco, Coliantes, Crisologo, Daza, Defensor Michael, Dimaporo, Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Di Faustino Ino, Enverga, Erice, Espino, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Garbin, Garin Sharon, Gonzaga, Guya, Kunghun, Liachon, Ligarda, Manguda Datu, Marcoleta, Marino, Marquez, Matba, Mendoza, Nograles, Juan, Nunez, Malañaon, Uwaminal, Ordanes, Pacquiao, Alberto, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Rivera, Roman, Romero, Romualdo, Salceda, Sangcopan, Silverio, Singson, Mihan, Sinsuat, Suarez, Aleta, Suarez, David, C. Alvarado, Talyado, Tan Alaisa, Tan Samir, Tan Sherney, Tejada, Teves, Jose, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali, Maria Victoria, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villa, Villanueva Eduardo, Villar, Villarica, U. Zubiri.
With 206 members voting in the affirmative, House Bill number 10335 is hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader, maybe.
Madam Speaker, I move that we consider on third and final reading House Bill number 10344 and request the Secretary General to read the title of the bill and call the roll of members for nominal voting.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the bill and call the roll for nominal voting thereafter.
House Bill 10344, an act renaming the Bohol Island Circumferential Road, which commences in Barangay Poblacion 3 towards the north of the city of Tagbilaran and returns to Barangay Poblacion 3 from the eastern side of the city of Tagbilaran in the province of Bohol as the President Carlos P. Garcia Circumferential Road. Roll call of members for consideration on third reading of House Bill number 10344. Honorable Representatives, Abante Abaya Abelionosa Abu Abeg Saldivar Abunda Acosta Acosta Alba Adyong Advincula Agabas Agarao Aglipay Aguinaldo Albano Almario Alonte Alvarez Franz Alvarez Senaro Alvarez Pantaleon Mante Matba Amatong Angara Aragones Arbison Arenas Arroyo Atienza Aumentado Babasa Bagatsing Balindong Banyas Nograles Barba Barbers Baronda Barzaga Baskug Bautista Bautista Bandigan Belmonte Benitez Bernos Biazon Billones Biron Bolilla Bondok Bordado Bravo Brosas Bulut Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabutyan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Kawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredinil, Cayetano Alan, Cayetano Laarni, Celeste Chato, Chipeco, Chungalao, Co, Angelica, Co, Elizaldi, Co Juan, Co, Coliantes, Crisologo, Cua, Quaresma, Cueva, Culiamac, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, De Los Montalia, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas, Empleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Rigel, Ermita Buhayin, Escudero, Espina Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer, Juliet Ferrer, Luis, Flores, Fortun, Fortuno, Frasco, Fentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia, Jose Enrique, Garcia, Pablo Jan, Garcia, Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Go Ed, Go Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Guico, Gulias, Guya, Jaresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera, D. Hofer, Haloso, Xavier Jimenez, Co, Elisa, Co, Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Lacsonoe, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Leachon, Legado, Lim, Lim Kaichong, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malipitan, Mangawang, Maudadatu, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Momo, Natividad, Dangaño, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho, Nograles, Fidel, Nolasco, Núñez, Malañaon, Oaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Uano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Romero, Romualdez Martin, Romualdez Siada, Romualdo, Romulo, Roger, Sokdalan, Sagarberia, Takaluran, Seda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salvador, Tambunting, Sanchez, Sangcopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulog, Sabillano, Siao, Silverio, Singson, Mihan, Sinsuat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, Si Alvarado, Taduran Talyado, Tan Alisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Shari, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tianco Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo Tupas, Tutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Victoria, Nonabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villafuerte, Villanueva, Eduardo Villanueva, Noel, Villar, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Villago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri. Second call of members for consideration on third reading of House Bill number 10344. Honorable Representatives, Abante Abaya, Abunda, Acosta Alba, Agaraw, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amatong Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Banyas Nograles, Baronda, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bulut, Kanama, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Chungalaw, Co Angelica, Cojuangco, Colliantes, Risologo, Daza, Defensor Michael, Di Maporo, Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Di Faustino Ino, Enverga, Erisa, Espino, Fariñas, Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Garbin, Garin, Sharon, Gonzaga, Guya, Konghun, Leachon, Legarda, Mangudadatu, Marcoleta, Marino, Marquez, Matba, Mendoza, Nograles, Juan, Nunez, Malañaon, Oaminal, Ordanes, Pacquiao, Alberto, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Rivera, Romero, Roman, Romero, Romualdo, Salceda, Sancopan, Silverio, Mihan, Sinsuat, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Talyado, Tan Alisa, Tan Samir, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Maria Victoria, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villanueva, Eduardo Villarica, Yu Zubiri.
With 209 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, House Bill number 10344 is hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we consider on third and final reading House Bill numbers 10362, 10376, 10451, and 10452, all under the cluster of establishment and upgrading of hospitals. May I request that we direct the Secretary General to read the titles of the bills and thereafter call the roll of members for nominal voting.
The Secretary General is directed to read the titles of the bills and call the roll for nominal voting thereafter.
House Bill number 10362, an act establishing in the municipality of Ipil, province of Zamboanga, Sibugay, a medical center to be known as the Zamboanga Sibugay Medical Center and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 10376, an act upgrading the Orani District Hospital in the municipality of Orani, province of Bataan, into a Level 2 General Hospital to be known as the Antonio Tony P. Roman Memorial Hospital, increasing its bed capacity from 50 to 200 beds and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 10451, an act increasing the bed capacity of the Baguio General Hospital and Medical Center in the city of Baguio, province of Benguet, from 800 to 1,500 beds and appropriating funds therefore. House Bill number 10452, an act converting the Basilisa Mother and Child Specialty Hospital in the municipality of Basilisa, province of Dinagat Island, into a Level 2 General Hospital to be known as the Ruben E. Ecleo Senior General Hospital and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call of members in consideration on third reading of House Bill numbers 10362, 10376, 10451, and 10452. Honorable Representatives Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg Saldivar, Abunda, Acosta Alba Adyong, Advincula, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez France, Alvarez Genaro, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amante Matba, Matong Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Mentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Baños Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barsaga, Baskug, Bautista, Bautista Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bolilla, Bondoc, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulot, Bustos, Kabatbat, Cabochan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro Franz, Castro Fredenil, Cayetano Alan, Cayetano Laarni, Celeste Chato, Chipeco, Chunggalaw, Co Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Cuanco, Colyantes, Crisologo, Cua Quaresma, Cueva, Culyamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza de Jesus, de Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael de los Santos, de Loso Montalia, de Maporo Abdullah, de Maporo Cali, Duavit Duhali Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas, Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erice, Erigel, Ermita, Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer Juliet, Ferrer Luis, Flores, Fortuno, Frasco, Fuentebella, Gaite, Garbin, Garcia Jose Enrique, Garcia Pablo Jan, Garcia Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Goed, Mark, Gonzaga, Gonzales Aurelio, Gonzales Neptali, Gonzales Sandro, Goriseta, Gico, Gulias, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera D, Hofer, Halosos, Javier, Jimenez, Co Eliza, Co Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lasatin, Liachon, Ligarda, Lim, Kaychong Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Makapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadato, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marinho, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Momo, Natividad, Naganyo, Navan, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho, Nograles, Fidel, Nolasco, Nunez, Malanyaon, Uwaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Uwano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radasa, Ramirez Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman Romero, Romualdez Martin, Romualdez Sieda, Romualdo Romulo Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salos, Salvador Tambunting, Sanchez, Sangcopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulug, Savellano, Xiao Silverio, Singson, Singson Mihan, Sinsuwat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, si Alvarado, Taduran, Talyado, Tan Alaysa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Sharian, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tiangco, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo, Tupas Chutor, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Victoria, Unabia, Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano, Valmayor, Vargas, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso, Vergara, Villa, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villar, Villarraza Suarez, Villarica, Violago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu, Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate, Zubiri. Second call for consideration on third reading of House Bill numbers 10362, 10376, 10451, and 10452. Abante, Abaya, Bunda, Costa Alba, Agaraw, Alvarez Pantaleon, Amatong, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Baños Nograles, Baronda, Biazon, Billones, Biron, Bulot, Kanama, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Chunggalaw, Co Angelica, Cujuangco, Colyantes, Crisologo, Daza, Defensor Michael, Demoporo, Cali, Duavit, Duhali, Di Faustino, Ino, Enverga, Erice, Espino, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Garbin, Garin Sharon, Gonzaga, Guya, Konghun, Liachon, Legarda, Mangudadato, Marcoleta, Marinho, Marquez, Matba, Mendoza, Nograles 1, Nunez Malanyaon, Uwaminal, Ordanes, Pacquiao Alberto, Pichay, Pineda, Pimentel, Rivera, Roman Romero, Romualdo, Sangcopan, Silverio, Singson Mihan, Sinsuwat, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, si Alvarado, Talyado, Tan Alaysa, Tan Samir, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Tolentino, Torres Gomez, T. Alan, T. Diego, Umali Maria Victoria, Uy Juliet, Veloso, Villa, Villanueva Eduardo, Villar, Villarica, Yu, Zubiri.
With 209 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, House Bill number 10362, 10376, 10451, and 10452 are hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I move that we also consider on third and final reading House Bill numbers 10345, 10409, and may I request that the Secretary General be directed to read the titles of the bills and thereafter the roll of members for nominal voting.
The Secretary General is directed to read the title of the bills and thereafter call the roll for nominal voting.
House Bill number 10345, an act changing the name of Salin Elementary School in Barangay Sadsadan, Municipality of Bauco, Mountain Province to Talban P. Bitayan Elementary School. House Bill 10409, an act establishing community forests in Barangay Bayanga, Besigan, Dansolihon, Lumbia, Mambuaya, Pagalungan, Tumpagon, Pigsagan, San Simon, Taglimaw, Tagpangi, Tignapuloan, Tuburan, and Baikingon in the 1st District of Cagayan de Oro City, Province of Misamis Oriental, and appropriating funds therefore. Roll call of members for consideration on third reading of House Bill numbers 10345 and 10409. Abante, Abaya, Abellanosa, Abu, Abueg, Asaldivar, Abunda, Acosta, Alba, Adyong, Advincola, Agabas, Agaraw, Aglipay, Aguinaldo, Albano, Almario, Alonte, Alvarez, France, Alvarez, Genaro, Alvarez, Pantaleon, Amante, Matba, Amatong, Angara, Aragones, Arbison, Arenas, Arroyo, Atienza, Aumentado, Babasa, Bagatsing, Balindong, Banyas, Nograles, Barba, Barbers, Baronda, Barsaga, Bascug, Bautista, Bandigan, Belmonte, Benitez, Bernos, Biazon, Bilyones, Biron, Bolilla, Bondok, Bordado, Bravo, Brosas, Bulut, Bustos, Kabatbat, Kabutyan, Cabredo, Cagas, Calderon, Calixto, Caminero, Campos, Canama, Cawagdan, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Castro France, Castro Fredinil, Cayetano Alan, Cayetano Alaarni, Celeste Chato, Chipeco, Chungalauco, Angelica, Co Elizaldi, Co Juanco, Coliantes, Crisologo, Cua, Quaresma, Cueva, Culiamat, Dagook, Dalipe, Dalog, Daza, De Jesus, De Venecia, Defensor Lawrence, Defensor Michael, De Los Santos, Dimaporo Abdullah, Dimaporo Khalid, Duavit, Duhali, Duterte, Di Faustino Ino, Di Faustino Michael, Di Ian, Ebcas Ecleo, Elago, Enverga, Erisa, Erigel, Ermita Buhain, Escudero, Espina, Espino, Estrella, Fariñas Ria, Fariñas Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Ferrer, Juliet, Ferrer, Luis, Flores, Fortuno, Frasco, Fentebella, Gaita, Garbin, Garcia, Jose Enrique, Garcia, Pablo John, Garcia, Vincent, Garin Janet, Garin Sharon, Gasataya, Gatchalian, Gato, Heron, Goed, Gomar, Gonzaga, Gonzales, Aurelio, Gonzales, Naphtali, Gonzales, Sandro, Griseta, Guico, Gulyas, Guya, Haresco, Hataman, Hernandez, Herrera, D. Hofer, Alusos, Javier, Jimenez, Co Elisa, Co Wilton, Konghun, Labad-Labad, Lacson, Noel, Lagman, Lagon, Lara, Lazatin, Leachon, Legarda, Lim Caichon, Lopez, Loyola, Lusotan, Macapagal Arroyo, Maceda, Madrona, Malapitan, Mangawang, Mangudadato, Marcoleta, Mariano Hernandez, Marino, Marquez, Martinez, Matba, Matugas, Mendoza, Momo, Natividad, Nagaño, Nava, Nieto, Noel, Nograles, Jericho, Nograles, Fidel, Nolasco, Núñez, Malañaon, Oaminal, Olivares, Ong Jose, Ong Ronnie, Ordanes, Ortega, Uano Dizon, Pacquiao Alberto, Pacquiao Rogelio, Padiernos, Paduano, Palma, Pancho, Panotes, Peña, Pichay, Pimentel, Pineda, Plaza, Puno, Kimbo, Radaza, Ramirez, Sato, Remulla, Revilla, Reyes, Rivera, Robes, Rodriguez, Roman, Romero, Romualdez Martin, Romualdez Sieda, Romualdo, Romulo, Roque, Sakdalan, Sagarbaria, Sakaluran, Salceda, Salimbangon, Salo, Salvador, Tambunting, Sanchez, Sangcopan, Santos Recto, Sarmiento, Saulog, Savellano, Siao, Silverio, Singson Mihan, Sinsuat, Swansing Estrelita, Swansing Horacio, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, Suntay, Si Alvarado, Taduran Talyado, Tan Alisa, Tan Angelina, Tan Samir, Tan Shari, Tan Sherny, Tejada, Teves Arnolfo, Teves Jose, Tianco Tolentino, Torres Gomez, Tulfo Tupas, Tutorti, Alan T. Diego, Umali Alfonso, Umali Victoria, Unabia Ungab, Uy Juliet, Uy Rolando, Valeriano Valmayor, Vargas Alfonso, Velasco, Veloso Vergara, Villafuerte, Villanueva Eduardo, Villanueva Noel, Villarasa Suarez, Villarica, Villago, Yap Eric, Yap Victor, Yu Zamora Ronaldo, Zamora Waikurat, Zarate Zubiri. Second call of members for consideration on third reading of House Bill numbers 10345 and 10409. Honorable Representatives, Abante, Abaya, Abunda, Acosta, Alba, Agaraw, Alvarez, Pantaleon, Amatong, Arenas, Aumentado, Bagatsing, Banyas, Nograles, Baronda, Biazon, Bilyones, Biron, Bulut, Canama, Cardema, Cari, Castelo, Chungalaw, Co Angelica, Co Juanco, Coliantes, Crisologo, Daza, Defensor Michael, Dimaporo, Khalid, Duabit, Duhali, Di Faustino, Ino, Edverga, Risa Espino, Fariñas, Rudis, Fernandez, Fernando, Garin Sharon, Gonzaga, Guya, Konghun, Leachon, Legarda, Mangudadato, Marcoleta, Marino, Marquez, Matbam, Mendoza Nograles Juan, Núñez Malañaon, Ominal Ordanes, Pacquiao Alberto, Pichay Pimentel, Pineda Rivera Roman, Romero Romualdo, Sancopan, Silverio, Singsonmihan, Sinsuat, Suarez Aleta, Suarez David, C. Alvarado, Talyado, Tan Alisa, Tan Samir, Tan Sherney, Tejada Tolentino, Torres Gomez, T. Alalan, T. Diego, Umali Maria Victoria, Uy Juliet, Velosa Villa, Villanueva Eduardo, Villar, Villarica, Yu Zubiri.
With 209 members voting in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 0 abstentions, House Bill numbers 10345 and 10409 are hereby approved on third and final reading. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, with leave of the House, I move that we open the privilege hour.
With leave of the House and hearing no objection, the period of privilege hour is now open. Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, to avail of the privilege hour, I move that we recognize the Honorable Deputy Speaker, Lauren Legarda of the Lone District of Antique for her privileged speech.
The Honorable Deputy Speaker, Lauren Legarda of the Lone District of Antique is hereby recognized. Deputy Speaker Legarda.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Officer. Mayad nga hapon kaninyo nga tanan. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, the 26th Conference of the Parties, or COP26, to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, concluded on November 13 in Glasgow, following 2 weeks of negotiations among world leaders to decide on global policies and actions that would save humanity and the planet from the climate crisis. I wish to report in detail on the outcomes of this conference and the country's position that our Philippine delegation advanced and fought for during these talks. Allow me first, Mr. Speaker, to express my profound appreciation to our Finance Secretary, Carlos Sani Dominguez, who is a concurrent designated chair of the Climate Change Commission, for spearheading our Philippine delegation to COP26, composed of representatives from the Departments of Finance, Foreign Affairs, Energy, and Environment and Natural Resources. Thank you for representing our country in this crucial event, as well as for providing this representation a report about its key outcomes. I also thank our friends in civil society, from the Institute for Climate and Sustainable Cities, Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, Action Klima, Youth Strike for Climate Philippines, and the other NGOs and CSOs who were also in Glasgow to help push for the needed decisions and actions from all countries and stakeholders. To recall, COP26 was originally scheduled in year 2020, but was postponed to this year due to the pandemic. The previous COP25 took place in December 2019 in Madrid, where I headed the Philippine delegation. There was a significant gap in between these annual climate negotiations, and so there was tremendous expectation for COP26 to make up for the lost time and accelerate action towards the achievement of the goals set in the Global Climate Treaty, the Paris Agreement. A successful COP26, especially for the Philippines and fellow vulnerable developing countries, meant delivering on 3 major work streams, which are climate ambition, climate adaptation, and climate finance. Unfortunately, COP26 was not the COP that we had needed it to be. It did not give us enough reason to heave a big sigh of relief just yet, in light of the latest climate warnings issued last August that signaled Code Red for humanity. Many considered that the Glasgow Climate Pact, the main output containing the decisions adopted by 197 countries in COP26, was a disappointment. Even United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres called the approved text as a compromise, and that we are still knocking on the door of climate catastrophe. On climate ambition, countries' pledges to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions, or what we call as the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs, taken together, are still not enough to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. 1.5 is our climate threshold for our very own survival. But after COP26, experts are saying that global warming would still increase to 2.4 degrees Celsius or even higher. The Glasgow Climate Pact also noted the developed countries' failure to deliver support in jointly mobilizing 100 billion US dollars of climate finance per year from year 2020 until 2025, as well as noting that the provision for adaptation remains insufficient to respond to the worsening climate change impacts in developing countries. These three aspects, ambition, adaptation, and finance, are the very foundations of our fight for climate justice. And without the clear, adequate, and predictable provisions for such, we cannot truly consider ourselves safe and resilient in the many years to come. While COP26 did not meet our expectations, it still gave us some wins, so to speak, and more reasons to look forward and continue marching on. First is the unprecedented inclusion of language against coal and other fossil fuels in the pact, even with COP26 having coal, oil, and gas industry executives present. In the decision, countries are called upon, and I quote, to accelerate the transition towards low-emission energy systems, including accelerating efforts towards the phase down of unabated coal power and phase out of inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, unquote. It also invited countries to consider further actions to reduce by year 2030 non-carbon dioxide greenhouse gas emissions, including methane. The explicit mention of methane is also a first in the history of COP. Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, I think it is very clear this is a death sentence on coal and fossil fuels. Another win is the inclusion of a special section on loss and damage in the pact. It acknowledged that, and I quote, climate change has already caused and will increasingly cause loss and damage, and that as temperatures rise, impacts from climate and weather extremes as well as slow onset events will pose an even greater social, economic, and environmental threat, unquote. The pact was not at all clear on whether developing countries will be compensated on loss and damage, but it builds the momentum for clearer and stronger provisions in future climate talks. This is on top of the mobilization of 100 billion US dollars of climate finance from 2020 to 2025 every year for developing countries, and the dedicated support for adaptation that we continue to call for. The Philippines was steadfast in advancing our country's positions and interests during COP26. In our national statement, delivered eloquently by our Secretary Dominguez before world leaders, we have called for a framework on climate justice, where developed countries must accept the responsibility of financing the needs of developing countries in the form of grants, investments, and subsidies. This is to improve the capacity of the local community to pursue bankable adaptation and mitigation projects and support initiatives to help the transition towards a climate resilient economy. In the pact, multilateral banks, financial institutions, and the private sector were called to enhance the mobilization of finance for these resources and to further scale up investments on climate action. COP26 reaffirmed the Paris Agreement goal of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2100, noting that climate impacts will continue to worsen with every additional increment of rising temperatures. But doing so would require rapid, deep, and sustained reductions in global greenhouse gas emissions. It also reaffirmed that developing countries must have the adequate support of finance, technologies, and capacity development to be able to adapt to climate impacts while also being able to transition towards a low carbon development. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, allow me to end with a statement from parliamentarian Alok Sharma of the United Kingdom, who served as COP26 president as he closed the 2-week negotiations, both emotional and quite apologetic. He said, and I quote, "We can now say with credibility that we have kept 1.5 degrees alive, but its pulse is weak, and it will only survive if we keep our promises and translate commitments into rapid action," unquote. Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues, our nation must remain vigilant in the next crucial months and years that would decide the fate of humanity and our planet. Within our own country, we must also do all that we can to keep the 1.5 degrees call alive for the sake of our indigenous peoples, for the sake of our vulnerable populations in the rural areas, for the sake of the next generation, for the sake of all generations to come. We need to enjoin all our stakeholders in enabling the just and accelerated transformation of all our communities and sectors towards resilience and sustainability. And as we all face a campaign in the many months to come, may I encourage all our esteemed colleagues to make climate action in our respective districts, provinces, cities, and municipalities, and encourage as well all our leagues of municipalities and cities and provinces and even barangays to engage in local urgent climate action, because every small climate action counts towards resilience and sustainability. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully move that we recognize the Honorable Ferdinand Gaite of Bayan Muna Party List to interpolate the Honorable Legarda.
The Honorable Ferdinand Gaite is recognized to interpolate the privileged speech.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Majority Floor Leader, and to our distinguished members of the House of Representatives. Blessed afternoon. Pahintulutan ba ng ating kagalang-galang na nagbigay na napakagandang privileged speech hinggil sa pandaigdigang suliranin ng climate change para mag-clarify lang sa mga ilang napakahalagang punto na hinaharap ng hindi lamang ng Pilipinas, kundi ng buong mamamayan sa buong daigdig ngayon. Mr. Speaker, ating kagalang-galang na Senator Congresswoman Lauren Legarda.
Opo, ako po ay nagagalak na makausap maski virtually ang ating minamahal na kongresista Kong Gaite, at mabuti po at nabibigyan ng pansin ang klima at kalikasan.
Maraming salamat po. Kami po ay highly appreciative ng sa ginagawang mga hakbang ng ating kagalang-galang na Congresswoman Lauren Legarda, lalo na sa usapin na alam na natin matagal na advocate ang ating kagalang-galang na Senator na Congresswoman Lauren Legarda sa usapin ng klima. At alam natin na ito na yung masasabi nating matagalang advokasya na kapakanan ng mamamayan sa buong daigdig, bunga ng mga nagaganap sa usapin ng ating kalikasan, ng ating klima, at ang epekto nito sa ating bayan. Tama po kayo, no, na katatapos lamang ng COP26, at dito po supposedly gustong i-reaffirm dapat yung original commitments. Doon nabanggit na yung 1.5 degrees centigrade na pagbaba, doon sa commitment na may baba ang global temperatures, average global temperatures, at gayon din nabanggit nyo na po yung mga measures patungo dito. Yung sinabi nyo po patungkol doon sa mga paggamit ng mga fossil fuels na napakalaki ng dinadagdag doon sa greenhouse gas emissions na nagko-contribute sa climate change. Sa tingin niyo po ba, sapat na ba yung naganap recently sa COP26? Were the commitments firm enough? Considering that many of the commitments matagal pa yung targets, no? I understand yung iba nagtatalo kung gaano katagal bago nila ma-implement yung ganitong measures. But does the good Congresswoman believe that the commitments made by the various countries sufficient to address the problem of climate change, Mr. Speaker?
Maganda pong tanong at i-reiterate ko po sa mas maliwanag na paraan. Tatlo po ang adikain po sana natin. Climate ambition at kasama po dyan ang climate finance at adaptation. Isa-isahin po natin. Tinatanong po natin sa mga developed countries na ayon po sa Paris Agreement na dinagdaan ng 197 countries na dinepensa ko, sponsor po sa Senado at unanimous po ang pagpasa natin yung concurrence ng Pilipinas, ay nararapat lamang na ang developed countries po ay magbigay ng 100 bilyon kada taon tuwing 2020 hanggang 2025. Magtatapos na po ang taong 2021 ay hindi pa po na itatop up, so to speak, ang 2020 na commitment. Kaya nga po, linahad ko yung sinabi mismo the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres na medyo disappointed at ito'y compromise na nangyari. Pangalawa po, yan po sa climate finance. Pangalawa po ay yung climate reduction. Kailangan nga ay may deep and drastic cuts. Ano bang ibig sabihin nito? Yung nakasaad po na ang Pilipinas po ang isa sa nagtulak ng 1.5 degrees threshold Celsius sa increase sa temperatura. Medyo technical, pero ibig sabihin po, yung tanan, tawag namin, yung total ng greenhouse gas emissions sa buong mundo, pag business as usual, ibig sabihin kung di po tayo magbago, pag hindi po tayo mag-transition as a low carbon development, pag hindi po magbago ang mga binubuga ng mga industrialized developed nations, ay ayon sa siyensya, ayon na rin nung Agosto sa IPCC report, yan na ang pinaka sigurong credible na body of scientists na nagsabi ng Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change na hihigit sa 2-3 degrees Celsius ang increase. Sa nangyayari, Mr. Speaker, esteemed colleague, na ngayon nga 1 degree Celsius pa lang ang nabibreach po natin ang nangyayari sa atin mula pa ng more than 10 years ago na Ondoy hanggang sa Yolanda, hanggang sa nakaraang taon na Ulysses, at maski walang bagyo ay tayo po ay naaanod ng baha or nadadrought sa panahon ng tag-init. Ibig sabihin po, it is a matter not just of sustainable development, it is a matter of our very survival. Tayo pong mga developing countries na vulnerable sa mundo. So kailangan po ng deep and drastic cuts ng mga pangako ng ating mga industrialized developed nations na siyang gumawa ng problema. So, sabi nga ni former Maldives President na ngayon ay parliamentarian sa maliit na isla ng Maldives, why are we bearing the brunt of something we did not cause? At kasama po ni Mohammed Nasheed ng Maldives, kasama po ni Saber Chowdhury ng Bangladesh, Member of Parliament, at inyong lingkod po, ay nagtayo po tayo more than 10 years ago ng CVF, Climate Vulnerable Forum. Minumungkahi ko po, sana sumama po ang grupo nyo, Konggaite, at sana kayong lahat po, para bilang pong ambassador ng CVF for Parliament sa mundo, ay hinihimok ko po, iniimbita ko po ang aking mga colleagues sa House of Representatives na sumanib po sa atin sa CVF para po mas malakas ang ating boses dahil more than 40 countries na po ang membro ng Climate Vulnerable Forum. So binanggit na ko po ang climate finance na hindi pa po binibigay yung pondo na suma total. Hindi sa Pilipinas lang po yan. Para yan sa buong mundo po. At pangalawa, yung climate ambition dapat deep and drastic cuts at hindi nga ito maaabot ayon sa NDC. Ano ba ho yung NDC? Ito po yung Nationally Determined Contributions. Ibig sabihin po, ang bawat bansa ay may mga target at ayon sa kanilang target, hindi lang sa enerhiya, kundi na rin sa agrikultura, kundi na rin sa iba't ibang sektor. Pag isusuma total natin lahat yan, ay ano ba ang mapupuntahan ng mundo? At ayon sa komputasyon po ng ating mga scientifico, ay 2.47, hindi nga 1.5. Kaya po, bilang isang nangangalaga sa kalikasan at kapakanan ng ating kabataan at susunod na henerasyon, paano natin sasabihin na wasak na ang mundo, that they will inherit parched earth, that all they will do is inherit the floods, na mawawala ang 1/3 ng flora at fauna at biodiversity sa ating mundo? What kind of world, of planet will we bequeath the next generation? Pangatlo po, climate adaptation. Ang Pilipinas, dahil tayo po ay hindi naman po emitter sa mundo, tayo naman po ay 0.3, 1/3 of 1%. Pero top 3 sa ating vulnerability. Kaya kailangan ay talagang matuto po tayo sa climate adaptation. Ano ba ho ito? Actually, nagawa na po natin. Lahat ng batas, kuning na lang ay sundin. Yung mga rainwater collector, yung mga early warning system, pati yung ating renewable energy law, yung ating ecological solid waste management law, yung naipasa natin sa Kongreso na integrated food agriculture na pagtatanim ng sariling mga gulay. Marami po tayong 10. INIPAS law, expanded National Integrated Protected Area System, marami po tayong naipasa na masasabi po natin akma sa climate change adaptation. At At babanggitin ko po, bilang UNFCCC Global Champion on Adaptation ay tungkulin ko po, maliban sa aking tungkulin mag-represent po ng aking probinsya, ay tumulong sa iba't ibang bansa para magturo po ng climate adaptation. So sa tingin ko po, in my humble opinion, sa tatlong puntos pong yan, ay hindi po naging matagumpay ang COP. Ngunit, gaya po ng sinabi ko sa aking privilege speech ay hindi naman puro masama. May mga wins dahil po binanggit ang loss and damage at binanggit ang fossil fuel. Never po nangyari yan. Ngayon po, maski nandyan po ang mga top leaders po ng fossil fuel industry, ay nabanggit na po na kailangan mag-transition na towards the low carbon pathway. So, I would say, Mr. Speaker, as a perennial optimist, always seeing my jug, yan, climate reality po, yung aking jug, a jug half full rather than half empty. I would never give up in seeking climate justice.
Salamat po, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that very yung binibigyan nyo ng clarity, no? Yung usapin kung paano ma-address comprehensively yung problem ng climate change, no? At kita ng ating kagalang-galang na sponsor na sa iba't ibang aspeto ng pag-address ng climate change. Tama, no? Yung usapin ng finance, yung usapin ng adaptation, at nabanggit nyo yung climate justice, no? Tama yun, no? We are one in analyzing properly how the problem of climate change was actually introduced, no? Yung problem na ito dahil nga sa ginawa ng mga industrialisadong mga bansa na nagdagdag sa greenhouse gas emissions. Pero tulad ng inyong tamang observation, ngayon, tulad ng mga leader ng Maldives, tama yung assessment nila. Bakit yung mga maliliit na bansa ngayon ang sisingilin sa pag-address ng problema ng climate change? Kaya talagang sistema ito na makikita natin, pandaigdigan, na mas madalas at tama yung assessment nyo, that the small countries, the developing countries, sila yung they receive the brunt of the effects of the climate change. Yung mga malaking bansa, dahil meron silang kapital, meron silang pondo, ay maaari, no? Meron silang mas prepared sila, no? To address the problem of climate change. But the smaller countries na hikahos, especially now in the time of pandemic, would be hard put, no? In allocating resources in addressing the climate change. Kaya tama po at agree po ako na dapat kahit sa usapin ng climate financing, malaki dapat ang load o burden ng mga nag-contribute doon sa pagdagdag ng greenhouse gases sa buong daigdig. Tama pa rin naman po yung inyong observation na bagamat nakakalungkot nga doon sa COP26 ay hindi necessarily lahat ng panawagan ng mga environmental activists ay narinig. Tama naman na may mga ilan naman nakuha, lalo na nabanggit nyo tungkol sa paggamit ng fossil fuels, nabanggit nyo yung sa financing, pero ang nababahala lang ako, Mr. Speaker, ating kagalang-galang na Congresswoman Legarda, yung period, no? Na kung kailan, like, yung commitments regarding how to lower the greenhouse gas emissions. Doon nga sa binanggit nyo po, yung human extinction because of the omission or commission of the leaders of the country, never in our history has it become more possible. Kaya po nakakabahala, no? Yung kalagayang ito. Panghuli na lang, Mr. Speaker, Madam Sponsor, kami po ay nakikisa sa inyong panawagan. Kaya kami po sa Makabayan Block filed the resolution, House Resolution number 2362, which is entitled the Resolution for the Adoption of a People's Green New Deal for a Just and Green Economic Recovery. We believe through House Resolution number 2362, which we filed last November 17, this will comprehensively address not only the current crisis of the pandemic, but also address the ongoing crisis of our climate. At dito, sinisikap, no, na dito sa People's Green New Deal na tawag po namin, kailangan talaga habang ina-address yung problema ng klima, kailangan itulak at stimulate ang rapid economic growth. Kailangan mag-create ng millions of decent jobs and ensure prosperity and economic security for all Filipinos. There must be the problem of poverty must be genuinely addressed so that the incomes of the poorest 20% of families victims of climate extreme shall also be addressed. Kailangan rin, especially sa ating ekonomiya, there should be a need to develop sustainable agricultural and national industry using environmentally sound production technologies and methods. Gayun din, para ma-achieve yung net zero greenhouse gas emissions, o GHG, through a just economic recovery and transition for all communities and workers. Gayun din sa usapin ng kung paano na-ensure na to secure for all Filipinos, generations to come, clean air and water, climate and community resiliency, health and accessible food, access to nature, and a sustainable environment. Marami pa hong ibang mga measures dito at alam ko na ang ating kagalang-galang na kinatawan, Congresswoman Senator Legarda, and Senator Legarda, alam ko na kaisa tayo at susuportahan nyo din yung aming panawagang ito. Tulad na rin ng gagawin naming suporta sa inyong matagal na mga panawagan para i-address ang lumalalang krisis sa klima sa buong daigdig. Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker. Thank you sa ating kagalang-galang.
Mr. Speaker, gusto ko po mag-respond at sana wag muna umalis ng podium si Kong Gaite. Ako po, Mr. Speaker, ay galak na galak sa mga binasa po ninyo. Ay talagang sinasapuso ko po ang inyong mga pinahayag at makakaasa po kayo sa ating shared advocacy sa pagtahak ng landas sa ating pandemic recovery. Palagi ko po sinasabi, simula pang pandemya, our recovery is not just for health, but it should be aligned to the climate pathway dahil ang krisis ng klima at ang COVID-19 ay iisa lang ang pagtahak ng landas ang solusyon dyan. Kung ang ating pag-ahon mula sa pandemya ay hindi ayon sa climate emergency, ay babalik tayo sa dating normal. And this will spawn more infectious diseases, even more frequent, even worse than COVID-19. Ako po ay sumasang-ayon sa lahat po ng aspeto na binanggit. At matutuwa kayo pag sabihin ko po na lahat ng inyong binanggit, ere man, lupa man, o resilience, lahat po kung babasahin nyo, may batas na po tayong ginawa yan. Having been in the Senate since 1998 till 2019, I can assure you, my dear colleagues from the Makabayan Bloc, lahat po ay na-cover na natin sa batas. Ang ating dapat pagtulungan gawin to ensure the effective and efficient implementation of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Ecological Solid Waste Management Law, RA 9003, the Renewable Energy Law, the Expanded National Integrated Protected Area System, the Climate Change Act, the People Survival Fund, the Environmental Awareness Education Act, the Green Jobs Act, and the National Disaster Risk Reduction Management Act. At nag-file po ako ng PENCAS bill. Sana po mag-co-author kayo para po ang ating pagsukat sa ating ekonomiya ay hindi lamang GDP, GNP, kundi ang ating natural resource accounting ay dapat kasama po sa ating economic modeling. Gusto ko rin pong ipahayag din sa ating magiting na kongresista na ang ating action sa Pilipinas, hindi tayo magsasabi na kawawa naman tayo ay biktima, wala na. Hindi po. So, importante po ang ating action. Babasahin ko po, the Philippines will not wait. Ito po yung position po ni Secretary Dominguez na Secretary of Finance at designated chair ng ating commission. We will not wait for Western nations to get their act together. The country is moving ahead with urgency in the implementation of its actual projects on the ground to enable it to meet its commitments. What is the Philippines doing? We are putting together a group of Filipino experts from all corners of the country to engage Filipinos in climate vulnerable communities and prepare them to execute localized action plans, the NPTE, launching of the Philippines Sustainable Finance Roadmap to encourage public and private investments in green resilient projects, which will redound to thousands, if not millions of jobs, pushing for a law banning single-use plastic, which the House of Representatives has already passed on third reading, embarking on a project with the Asian Development Bank to accelerate the country's transition from coal to clean energy in a just and affordable manner. At alam natin yung issue ng adaptation ay bumabalik rin sa usapin ng pondo. Ang panawagan po natin ay madagdagan ang pondo o financing para sa adaptation, which is for getting communities not to be more vulnerable so that they can actually find the resources to be able to do their own local adaptation measures. Ngayon po, tinatayang 10% lang ng financing para sa klima sa buong mundo ang napupunta sa adaptation. Kasi po, yung Green Climate Fund, ako po ay dating member of the board niyan, nag-yield na po ako kay Commissioner Herrera ng Climate Change Commission. Dahil maraming biyahe, carbon footprint ko, ayokong dumami. So, pero nung nakikinig po ako bilang chairman of the board, nakikita ko po na yung Green Climate Fund ay puro pang mitigation. Ang mitigation, mabuti na rin yun. Pero tayo 1/3 of 1%. Kailangan ilihis nila yung pondo sa mga mahihirap na bansa para meron tayo pang climate adaptation at hindi lang 10%. Salamat po sa inyong pamamahayag ng inyong New Green Deal. Ako po'y kaisa ninyo, kasalo nyo sa ating adikain ng ating pag-ahon mula sa ating pandemya ay ayon sa ating pagtahak ng landas laban sa pagbabago ng klima. At natandaan nyo, last year, ang buong Kongreso, ang House of Representatives ay nagpasa ng ating resolusyon calling for a climate emergency. Habang tayo'y nangangampanya, magsama po tayo na hilingin natin hindi lamang sa ibang bansa, kundi a whole of nation, a whole of government, a whole of society approach so that each candidate wanting to serve our country must know the issue of climate. Because how can you lead when you don't know what's happening in the environment? And this will affect jobs and livelihood. This will affect health and healthcare. This will affect food and agriculture and fisheries as it is already affecting all of us, whether we are in Congress or we are in the hinterlands. Climate is an everyday and every man's issue. Ito'y tagos sa bituka. Ito'y hindi lamang pangsiyensya o mga advocates o aktivistang kamukha natin, kundi pang araw-araw na buhay. Kaya, inihiling ko rin sa lahat ng gusto magpangulo, lahat ng gusto mag-vice-presidente, lahat ng gustong mag-lead sa ating bansa, sana po ay tanungin ninyo, Kong Gaite, gaya ng pagtatanong nyo sa akin, ano na ang nagawa nyo para salbahin ang Pilipinas at ang Pilipino sa pagbabago ng klima? Ano na ang nagawa natin maski sa maliliit bagay? Kayo ba ay naghihiwalay ng basura sa inyong gusali, sa inyong bahay? Tayo ba ay nagtatapon ng buto o ito pa'y tinutuyot natin at sinesave? Tayo ba'y naghahalo ng basura? As simple as that. All politics is local and all climate action is local as well. If all the 108 million Filipinos would be enlightened and do it in our own small way, maski na tayo ay biktima ng pagbabago ng klima, magbabago po sa mabuting paraan ang ating pamumuhay.
Thank you, Madam Mr. Speaker. Thank you sa ating kagalang-galang na sponsor, Congresswoman Legarda. At bagamat ang kulay ng ating pinag-uusapan ay green, ang issue ng environment ay non-partisan. Hindi po ito pumapabor sa isang o ilang politiko dahil green. Alam natin na ang issue ng climate change ay multifaceted, no? Multicolored. At alam natin na ang usapin ng climate change ay napakahalaga dahil ang usapin ng kabuhayan, ng trabaho, at mismo ng survival ng sambayanan, ng buong daigdig ay nakasalalay dito. Maraming salamat po. Mabuhay po kayo. Salamat sa pagkakataong ito.
Salamat po. Ako po isang ayon sa sinabi nyo. The climate issue is what will bind all Filipinos towards urgent climate actions. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the next colleague of ours who wishes to interpolate the sponsor is the Honorable Gentleman from the 3rd District of Iloilo, our Deputy Majority Leader, the Honorable Lawrence Noy Defensor. I move that he be recognized. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Lawrence Defensor is recognized for his interpellation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Will the Honorable Deputy Speaker Legarda yield to a few questions from this representation?
It is my pleasure, Mr. Speaker, to answer the questions of my distinguished colleague from the island of Panay, our neighboring province.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I want to commend you for bringing up climate change as an issue, especially now that it has become and it has affected all our lives. Napaka-magandang kausa po itong pinapakita nyo sa amin at dapat pong dalhin natin, hindi lang dito sa Kongreso, kundi sa ating mga mamamayan, lalo't na lumalapit ang mga eleksyon, dapat mapagtuunan po ng ating mga leader ang climate change. Earlier, you mentioned that the developed countries have an obligation to assist third world and developing countries when it comes to climate change, including, among others, provide subsidy under the Paris Agreement. May I know, ma'am, for everyone to know, what are the specific obligations of the developed countries aside from providing financial assistance to developed countries para po maliwanagan naman ang ating mga kasamahan?
Maraming salamat, Mr. Speaker, esteemed Congressman from Iloilo. Una po ay nakaakda po sa ating nag-concur sa ratifikasyon ng Paris Agreement na ang mga mayayamang bansa na naging sanhi po na mga greenhouse gas emissions ito ay dapat nga magbigay ng $100 billion kada taon. Pero ito'y para sa buong mundo na at dapat ito ma-access ng mga developing nations sa maraming paraan. Pwede po mag-apply ng mga climate mitigation. Ibig sabihin po yung pagbabawas po ng greenhouse gas emissions at pwede rin yung sinabit ko na climate adaptation. Nabanggit ko po na mula sa pondo na kanilang mga binibigay, 10% lang po ay para sa climate adaptation at 90% ay para sa mitigation. E paano yun? Kung hindi naman po tayo emitter sa mundo, 1/3 of 1%. Pero ang linilihis po nila ang pondo para lamang sa mitigation. So kailangan, ang pinaglalaban po natin, 50-50 mitigation at 50% adaptation. Paano po na-access to? Isa pa po yun na pinapaglaban po natin. Masalimuot ang proseso. Kaya nga ayoko na maging member of the board ng Clean Climate Fund. Debate ng debate. Hindi naman po nakaka-access. Pero nung panahon po na ako'y member of the board, ang Pilipinas po ay naka-access ng pondo ang Pag-asa sa kanilang hindi lamang yung ating Pag-asa Modernization Act na na-legislate po natin, meron pong mga early warning systems na presentation po ang Pag-asa at ilang taon po itong inaplayan hanggang finally na-approve po ng board. But I'm not certain whether na-download na ang pondo ngayon kasi mabagal at masalimuot ang proseso. So maari pong grants, maari pong mga incentives, maari pong transfer of technology, pero ang aking gusto po at ang aking hangarin ay this must be over and above ODA. Hindi pwede yung ODA sabihin, yun na yun. Hindi po. Kailangan ay ang ating pondo at tulong sa mga bansang nasasalanta ng mga bagyo at tagtuyot ay iba pa po sa official development assistance, iba pa yung pangtulong sa teknolohiya, iba pa yung tulong sa transfer of knowledge, iba pa yung innovation, iba pa yung research and development, iba pa yung outright pagbibigay po ng climate finance sa ating mga adaptation projects. Let me just it says, developed country parties must urgently and significantly scale up their provision of climate finance, technology transfer, and capacity building for adaptation to developing country parties. And developing or developed country parties must mobilize jointly at least, as I said, $100 billion beginning 2020 in the context of meaningful mitigation actions and transparency. In short, yun nga yung $100 billion a year for all developing countries. Hindi pa nila na ibibigay yung last year eh. Paano po yun? Pangalawa nga ay nakalihis bias towards mitigation, not adaptation. So, marami pa pong dapat gawin at hindi matatapos sa Glasgow ang usapan. Kaya marami pong mga meeting pa yan hanggang sa susunod na Conference of Parties na tinatawag.
Yes.
Pero, ito po ang aking mungkahi. At kausap ko si Secretary Dominguez. Let us act like no one is helping us. And let us ensure that the budget we are passing is a climate adaptive, resilient, green, sustainable development GAA. Para yung 5 trilyon na budget ay naka-mainstream na po ang climate change adaptation at mitigation at disaster risk reduction sa buong GAA. Then we would have said that we've done our part and we are caring and taking care of our population. Mr. Speaker.
Tama po yan. Mr. Speaker, if there are obligations on the part of developed countries to assist developing countries such as the Philippines, Mr. Speaker, pwede po ba naming malaman, are there also specific obligations on the part of developing countries under the Paris Agreement or under the COP na dapat naman nating ipatupad? Katulad po sana siguro ng ating budget, are there specific obligations on the part of the Philippines and other developing countries, and are there standards of accomplishment na dapat din nating tignan if we are doing our part in helping the environment, in helping reduce the global warming and maintain it at 1.5 degrees? Ano po kaya ang dapat gawin ng mga developing countries tulad ng Pilipinas sa ilalim ng Paris Agreement?
That's a great question because we can't just keep on blaming the Western world or the polluters or the industrialized nations. We must do our part even if we are a non-emitter in the world. You're correct in applying it to our national life. We have our local or domestic laws, as I mentioned earlier, 10 or more. Let's implement it. Let's fund it. Let's make sure that every district, let's make sure that every province, let's make sure that every barangay understands the laws, implements it. Because we cannot just keep on crying and saying, you caused it. What about us now? So whether or not we are actually helped through climate finance and through an enhanced climate ambition, we must do our part. And all countries have submitted their NDCs. These are the nationally determined contributions. Right after the Paris Agreement, we submitted our INDC, but it has since evolved into our NDC. And we must ensure that we are also compliant with our nationally determined contribution so that each country in the world, developed or developing, must focus and must ensure its compliance with its NDC so that the global target of 1.5 degrees Celsius is met.
Thank
But
you.
as I said, the way the NDCs are submitted as of now, we will not meet the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius in the world. So it is important that developed nations must redo their NDCs for deep and drastic cuts for higher climate ambition.
Thank you, ma'am. In a broad sense, tama po yun na dapat may katuparan din ang ating mga obligasyon under the Paris Agreement. And earlier, you mentioned about the 2022 budget. Hindi ko po makita na nasa top 10 man lang ng budget allocation ng Department of Environment and Natural Resources. If I recall correctly, the congressional budget for my district para po sa DNR ay mahigit kumulang lang po sa 200,000 para sa personnel, for forest rangers, for reforesters. Napakaliit po na bagay. I'm very happy that you raised this issue na dapat po sa maliit na bagay, simulan natin ang pagbabago at pagtingin natin sa ating kapaligiran. I hope that with your assistance as Deputy Speaker, we can request the leadership of the government na lakihan naman po sana ang allocation natin para sa Department of Environment and Natural Resources. Because how can we do our part in not only proactively protecting the environment, but preserving what we have? At napakaliit na po ng forested area natin, napakaliit na po ng coral reef area natin. Our seas and our rivers are polluted at parang nababaliwala po ng mga tao. So I'm very happy that you raised climate change as a major issue for 2022 at sana po magtagumpay kayo sa inyong advokasya. Maraming salamat po, Deputy Speaker Loren Legarda. Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. Maraming salamat.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure the good congressman from my neighboring district that I will help him in his district and also help Governor Defensor in the whole province so that even our two provinces, which are contiguous with each other, can be sustainable. Let me assure you that the budget of the DNR is not the only budget that should be increased. In fact, as I said, Mr. Speaker, the whole 5 trillion budget, dapat tignan natin kung ito ba'y umaakma sa ating mga advokasya sa klima at sa kalikasan. Maski na ang health ay dapat green at sustainable. Maski na ang DepEd, green at sustainable at resilient. So, in short, naka-mainstream na po ang ating mga batas which are already existing. In fact, when I chaired the Senate Committee on Finance for several years, I had included 50 at least major general and special provisions for climate adaptation and resilience in the budget, and I have submitted these special and general provisions, non-monetary, but mainstreaming DRR, CCAM in our budgetary process. I am grateful to my esteemed colleague from Iloilo for the very enlightening questions and clarifications so that our districts in the country may be made more resilient, sustainable, and green. Madamo gid nga salamat.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we refer the speech of our esteemed Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Lauren Legarda, to the Committee on Rules So moved, Mr. Speaker.
The privileged speech of the Honorable Lauren Legarda, along with the interpellations of the Honorable Gaite and the Honorable Defensor, are hereby referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the next of our colleagues who wishes to avail of the privilege is the lady from the party list Bayan Muna. I move for the recognition of the Honorable Euphemia Kafemia Kulyamat. So move, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Euphemia Kafemia Kulyamat is recognized for her privileged speech.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker. Kagalang-galang na tagapagsalita, mga kapwa kinatawan sa Kongreso, sa plenaryo at saka sa Zoom, magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Ginoong Speaker, sa oras na ito, nais kong ipakilala si Antonio Molina, isang 77 taong gulang, isang matibay na farmers' rights advocates, organisador ng magsasaka sa Palawan, at bilanggong politikal na ikinulong sa gawa-gawang kaso. Hinuli siya noong October 2019 kasama ang 6 pang mga tagapagtanggol ng karapatang pantao dahil sa gawa-gawang kasong kriminal. Pang-apat siya sa political prisoners na nakabase sa Southern Tagalog na namatay habang hindi makatarungang nakakulong sa ilalim ng malupit na panuntunan ng rehimeng Duterte. Sa unang bahagi ng taong ito, kagalang-galang na Speaker, na lamang may stage 4 cancer si Tatay Antonio Molina. Sa kasagsagan ng pandemya ng COVID-19, naghain ng petisyon ang grupong kapatid, kaisahan ng mga kamag-anak at kaibigan ng mga political prisoners upang palayain ang mga bilanggong politikal, lalo na ang mga matatanda at may sakit dahil vulnerable silang mahawaan ng COVID sa kulungan. Ngunit nananatiling bulag at bingi ang administrasyong ito. Habang hindi pinapalaya ang mga bilanggong politikal, walang tigil ang pag-atake kahit ang compassionate release na dapat ginawa ng pamahalaan ay binaliwala. Ginoong Speaker, nag-apila ang mga human rights groups para sa kagyat na atensyong medikal at compassionate release para kang Tatay Antonio dahil sa kanyang karamdaman. Ngunit ito ay tinanggihan ng korte. Umanaw si Tatay Antonio noong November 18 nang atakihin ng puso matapos ang ilang buwang laban sa COVID-19. Walang paglagyan ang aming lungkot at puot sa pagpanaw ni Tatay Antonio. Matanda at sakitin at higit sa lahat, inosente. Para sa amin na mga mahihirap, hindi kami papayag na parabang ito na ang aming kapalaran. Malinaw ang pagkakamali sa pamamahala ng ating gobyerno. Kaya dapat pakinggan ang panawagan ng mamamayan upang iwasto ang pagkakamaling ito. Ginoong Speaker, kung ang mga politikong nahahatulan ng pagkabilanggo ay nakakalabas at malayang nakakatakbo para sa eleksyon, bakit ang mga mahihirap at inosyenteng magsasaka ay basta-basta na lang ikinokulong? Hindi man lang pinapalaya para makapagpagamot ng maayos. Ilang ulit siyang pinagkaita ng hustisya. Kung tutuusin, ang kanser ng lipunan ang pumapatay kay Tatay Antonio at sa daan-daang pang kagaya niya. Mr. Speaker, sa kasalukuyan, mayroon pang 709 na bilanggong politikal at 59 sa kanila ay matatanda at 92 ay may mga karamdaman. Ang tanging patas at pagkakataong tugon ng Estado ay ang kagyat na pagpapalaya sa lahat ng bilanggong politikal, lalo na ang mga matatanda at may sakit. Mr. Speaker, hindi pa kuntinto Sa daan-daang inosinteng pinakulong, patuloy ang mga pandarahas at pagpapakulong. Sa Cagayan Valley, talamak ang atake laban sa mga magsasaka at aktivista. Nired ang bahay ng leader pisanti na si Isabelo Buting Adviento. Nitong Marso lang, inaresto rin ang isa pang leader pisanti na si Calixto Cabildo sa kanyang tahanan matapos ang matinding red tagging. Patuloy din ang operasyong persahang pagpasurrender. Ito ang kaso ng 1,200 na pisanti na humingi ng ayuda ngunit pinalabas na mga surrenderi ang taga-suporta di umano ng mga armadong rebelde. Patuloy ang red tagging sa mga magsasaka at sa anak pawis pangrehiyong formasyon ng NTF-ELCAC na pinupunduhan ng bilyon-bilyong piso ng pera ng taong bayan. Ginong Speaker, sa Sampaloc, Quezon naman, 2 magsasaka ang pinatay kasama ang isang matandang PWD. Sila ay sina Arnold Buri, 43, at si George Coronacion, 66, na may kapansanan dahil sa problema ng kanyang mata. Ang kanilang komunidad, maging ang kapitan ng kanilang barangay, ay magpapatunay na sila ay mga sibilyan at hindi armadong rebelde. Taliwas sa naratibo ng mga militar. Ginoong Speaker, ganito lamang ang dinaranas ng mga magsasaka at aktivista ngayon. Nitong November 16, ginunitaan natin ang anibersaryo ng madugong Hacienda Luisita Massacre. 17 taon na ang nakalipas. Dumanas pa rin ng matinding atake at karapatan at kagalingan ang mga magsasakang nakikibaka para sa lupa at hustisya. Hindi rin natin makakalimutan, kahapon November 22, ang ika-3 taon mula nang nilagdaan ni Pangulong Duterte ang Memorandum Order No. 32, isang deklarasyon ng state of lawlessness na ipinatupad sa Bicol, Negros at Samar. Hindi natin makakalimutan ang operasyon sa Negros na kumitil ng 14 na buhay ng mga magsasaka sa Canlaon, Manhoyod at Santa Catalina. Ito ay bahagi ng operasyong inilunsad sa ilalim ng Memorandum Order No. 32 na hanggang ngayon hindi pa rin nakakamit ang hustisya. Patuloy ang panawagan na ibasura ang Memorandum Order No. 32. Ginoong Speaker, sa panahong bumaha ang mga posters at materialis para sa paparating na eleksyon, parang dilubyo naman ang atake laban sa mga magsasaka, laban sa mga manghihirap. Huwag nating hayaang kumitil pa ng buhay ang kanser ng ating lipunan. Tumindig tayo kasama ang magsasaka at mamamayang nakikibaka. Palayain ang lahat ng bilanggong politikal, itigil ang atake laban sa mga magsasaka, isulong ang tunay na reforma sa lupa. Ito lamang po, Mr. Speaker. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon sa ating lahat.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we recognize the lady from Kabataan Party List, the Honorable Sarah Jane Ilago, for her manifestation.
The Honorable Sarah Jane Olago is recognized for her manifestation.
Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker. Mula po sa representasyong ito ng kabataan, nais namin maipabatid sa ating kagalang-galang na representante mula sa Bayan Muna na si Eufemia Culyamat na ang mga kabataan sa pamamagitan po ng representasyon na ito ay nakikiisa sa kanyang panawagan na daglian ng matugunan ang mga panawagan ng ating mga kababayang mga magsasaka at lahat ng nananawagan ng lupa, hustisya at ng pagtatanggol ng karapatan. Sa katunayan yan, Ginoong Speaker, tayo po ngayong hapon lamang ay nakiisa sa pagkilos ng mga magsasaka at ng ating iba't ibang mga human rights defenders, land rights advocates na nagsagawa po ng pagkilos dito sa House of Representatives upang maipaabot sa ating representasyon ang kanilang liham na nagdedetalye nag-uulat ng kanila pong mga nararanasan na iba't ibang mga paglabag sa kanilang karapatan na talagang nakakaapekto doon sa kanilang pang-araw-araw na buhay. Sila po, ang ating mga magsasaka, ang gulugod ng ating ekonomiya, ng ating lipunan, nagdadala ng pagkain sa ating mesa, at marami pang ibang nagpapaunlad at nagpapayabong ng nutrisyon ng bawat isa sa atin, ng bawat mamamayang Pilipino. Kaya po, isang malaking inhustisya kung hindi po mapapakinggan ang lahat ng kanilang mga nararanasan na abuso, diskriminasyon, ang matagal na pang-aapi at mga panunupil sa kanila pong mga hanay. Kaya po ang kabataan ay nakikiisa sa panawagan ng hands-off, Isabelo Adviento, palayain na ang lahat ng mga political prisoners, lalong-lalo na po yung nanggaling sa hanay ng mga land rights defenders, mga human rights defenders, climate warriors, lahat po yan kinakailangan para magpatuloy na maiparating ang kanilang boses dito sa ating kapulungan sa loob at labas ng Kongreso. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Speaker, at maraming salamat din po, Bayan Muna Representative Eufemia Colamat, sa pagsasalita tungkol sa issue na ito.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other member who wishes to interpolate or make a manifestation, I respectfully move that we refer the privileged speech of the Honorable Kulyamat as well as the manifestation of the Honorable Ilago to the Committee on Rules for appropriate action.
The privileged speech of the Honorable Eufemia Kafemia Kolyamat of the party list Bayan Muna, as well as the manifestation of the Honorable Sarah Jane Ilago of the Kabataan party list, are hereby referred to the Committee on Rules. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, there being no other member who wishes to avail of the privilege hour, I respectfully move that we close the privilege hour.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The privilege hour is hereby closed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I respectfully move that we immediately transmit to the Senate all bills approved on third and final reading during today's session.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The Secretary General is so directed. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, we are in receipt of a message from the Senate informing the House that the Senate has passed with amendments House Bill number 5644 entitled An Act Declaring the City of Karkar in the Province of Cebu a Cultural Heritage Zone. Mr. Speaker, we have been advised that the Committee on Basic Education and Culture, sponsor of the said House Bill as well as the author thereof, has no objections to the amendments introduced thereto by the Senate. In accordance with our rules, I move that we concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill number 5644.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved.
Mr. Speaker, we are in receipt of a message from the Senate informing the House that the Senate has passed with amendments House Bill number 7927 entitled An Act Establishing a Heritage Zone within the Municipality of San Vicente, Province of Ilocos Sur. Mr. Speaker, we have been advised that the Committee on Basic Education and Culture, sponsor of the said bill, as well as the author thereof, has also no objections to the amendments introduced thereto by the Senate. In accordance with our rules once more, I move that we concur with the Senate amendments to House Bill number 7927.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The motion is approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we designate the following members to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Bill number 10301 and Senate Bill number 2152, strengthening the Teacher Education Council as follows. Number 1, Representative Roman Romulo. Number 2, Representative Mark Go. Number 3, Representative Ruth Mariano Hernandez. Number 4, Representative Christine Alexei Tutor. And number 5, Representative Gabriel Bordado Jr. So moved, Mr. Speaker.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. The aforementioned representatives are so designated. Majority
Mr.
Leader.
Speaker, as requested by the Committee on Science and Technology through its chairperson, Representative Erico Aristotel Aumentado, and pursuant to our rules, I move that we recommit House Bill number 10251 under Committee Report number 1237 to the Committee on Science and Technology.
Is there any objection? The chair hears none. House Bill number 10251 is so recommitted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Speaker,
Majority Leader.
I move that we approve Journal number 13 for our session dated November 22, 2021. So move, Mr.
Is
Speaker.
there any objection? The chair hears none. Journal number 13, dated Monday, November 22, 2021, is hereby approved. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that we adjourn until tomorrow, November 24 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
The session is hereby adjourned until tomorrow, Wednesday, November 24, 2021 at 2 p.m.
Nasa ko lahat.
Thank you, sir.